Okay, hello grade 9s, hello people watching at home. This lesson, our goal is to quickly recap and run through the assessment task I handed out last week. Remember, it's a two-part assessment. We've got part 1 and part 2. Last week we looked at part 1. We didn't look at an example for part 1, and we didn't look at part 2 at all. So we'll quickly recap part 1, quickly show you an example there, and then from there, jump into part 2. So, read with me now with the assessment task sheet. Those of you playing at home, make sure you have a look at this as well. We've got Industrial Revolution and Christian Transformation. We remember that part 1 is all about looking at what human characteristics helped cause the Industrial Revolution. So we had a list on the board. Have a look through that list in your book or in your iPads. All those lists of character traits that led to the Industrial Revolution. We had stuff like pride, we had stuff like ingenuity, we had stuff like frustration. All those human traits that somehow led to the Industrial Revolution. What you need to do is you need to pick one that you think was most effective or influential in causing the Industrial Revolution and produce a report on it. That report needs to include, really quickly, a title, what the emotion, desire or quality is, including an example, in what ways it led to the Industrial Revolution, give specific historic examples, a discussion of the quality's merit. So that is, do you think it's a good quality? Do you think it's good, bad or otherwise? And why? Ways you see this quality displayed in our world. And finally, your future hopes regarding the quality or desire. Now that's just a recap from last week. What we're going to do now is look through my examples. So can you please turn to this one? Those of you playing at home, this is on sector. Check it out if you haven't already. Now what I've done is, because I used to get annoyed when I was a student, teachers would give you examples, but you'd always feel like they did exactly the same thing you wanted to do. So what I've done to make sure that isn't the case is I've done mine on a different historic event. I did one on World War I, but I've chosen a human trait that contributed to World War I, and I've done exactly the same task you need to do, but just on a trait contributing to World War I, so I didn't take any of your ideas. Let's read through this now, so have this in front of you. And what I want you to notice is the fact that those dot points over here are exactly the things, exactly the headings of my paragraphs in my example report. I encourage you to do the same thing. That way it's really clear that you've got everything we're looking for. Okay. Fear of others, a human cause of World War I. So you can do, for example, pride, a human cause of the Industrial Revolution, or something similar. What is fear of others? Now, we're not going to read through this entire document because that'll take a fair while. We're just going to read through maybe one or two of them just so you get a feel for it, and then that way you know where it is and you can look to it when you're doing your assignment. So when you're going through your assessment in a week's time, you forget, I forget what this looks like. That's right, I'll look at Mr. Grieger's example. Have a look at this when you need to. What is fear of others? People often seem to be afraid of those who are different to them. It appears this has been the case for millennia. It is as if we get so accustomed to the people and situations around us that anything that challenges this is seen as a threat or as bad. Fear of the others, then, is negative or fearful feelings of people different to oneself. For example, when one is at a party and they hear people from another school or group are coming, they might feel scared, even hostile, towards them. And what you'll notice is that my example there fulfills exactly the criteria that my assessment task asked for. Really quickly, I'm not sure if we discussed the word count suggestions last week or not, but you'll notice that there are word counts in brackets after all of those sections there. I'm not going to be going back and checking or counting how many words you've got. They're just suggestions reflecting how much work I think you'd need to put in to answer those questions adequately. So if you've got 170 words and it asks for 200, you won't lose marks for that. That's just a suggestion saying this question would take about roughly 200 words to answer. Really quickly, you'll see I've got a diagram here as well. It's a report, and reports are allowed to use images and diagrams if they're useful. So if you want to do so, you are very welcome to. Any questions about part 1 now? Anything that doesn't make sense? I want you to leave this lesson feeling like you're confident to start part 1. Pardon? Any questions about part one? Anything I can help clarify? Yeah. Yeah, that's you.
What do you mean by what the emotion, desire, quality?
What it is? Yep. So you're choosing a human emotion. That might be pride, it might be desire for improvement or something. Your first paragraph is detailing and describing what that desire or characteristic is. So for example, mine was fear of others. So my first paragraph explained what fear of the others was. Do you have an idea what quality you might be doing? Yep, which one? Perseverance. So your first paragraph explains what perseverance is and gives an example. Cool. Any other questions?
Do we need to include a diagram?
You don't need to, no. Do it if it's going to help. Because the reason I did, and when you read through it, you'll see this, that it helps explain something I'm talking about. If you find that a picture or a diagram would be useful, definitely use it.
Sure.
Cool. Cool. Any other questions about part one? You at the back?
Like with the future hopes regarding quality. So we kind of like what we wish it does.
Let's look at my example, that'll be better. So turn, it's the very last one, so on the example, have a look at the last paragraph. Pay attention please, thank you. The very last one, hopes for the future. So our task sheet asks us for future hopes regarding the quality or desire. My example is, I hope in the future humans are able to engage with each other in a spirit of friendship and brotherhood on all levels. So remember, mine's talking about fear of others. And so what do I hope happens to this concept in the future? Do I want people to still be afraid of each other in the future? Do I want there to be improvements or change? What do I want to happen with this in the future? If you're doing, what was yours, student, about? Perseverance. If you're doing perseverance, what do you want to happen to perseverance in the future? If you're doing pride, what do you want to happen to pride in the future? We go back to my example. Whether this be smiling at a stranger as you walk down the street, arriving in a foreign country and being greeted with warmth and local advice on good coffee, or our nation's leaders engaging with each other in a way acknowledging our commonalities rather than our disparities. I hope for a future where we are able to enjoy and celebrate our unique natures rather than fear the superficial differences. So taking your quality and saying what you want to happen in the future.
Is commonality really a word?
A word? Yes, it is.
I did not know that.
There we go. So that which is common. Cool. Any other questions? Cool. So hands up if you feel like you're confident to start part one now. If you understand what's going on, you're like, yeah, I get that. Cool. Any questions that you could ask to clarify anything those who are quite unsure? Or we can chat to each other one-on-one about that as well. Okay, we've got enough time to look at part two now. What I'd like you to do is go back to your assessment task sheets, have a look at part two. Now remember that clip we watched last week that was looked at that guy called Narayanan Krishna, that Indian fellow who did all that brilliant stuff with I forget what they were called, the untouchables of India, the lower class people there. And we looked at that clip to make a bit of a point, and that is to say that, there are people in the world that are making the world a better place. And we combine that with what we talked about in history, and that is that the world is always changing. The world changed because of the Industrial Revolution, and the world isn't the same anymore. In 100 years' time, the world will change again, and it will be completely different to the world we know today. So acknowledging that the world keeps changing, how do we want it to change? That's what this part two is all about. Let's have a read. The second part of your project, so I'm reading from part two down here now. The second part of your project relates to the current world and culture. You are required to design a revolution which seeks to improve or change an aspect of our current society based on Christian values. You should examine our culture today and identify something you believe needs to change. This could be anything. For example, the environment, entertainment, behaviour, health, the way we treat others, etc. You are required to give the following detail about your evolution. So, you need to find something that's wrong with the world, and you need to design a way to change it. Something that's wrong with the world, and you need to work out how to change it. And you're going to create or design a revolution for that. So we look at the Industrial Revolution, you are going to create your own revolution. Your revolution needs to include a name for the revolution, what the problem is and why the change is necessary, including a biblical reference. So if you think the problem is global warming, you're going to give me a paragraph saying global warming is a problem because of this and it needs to change because of this. Human causes of the problem. So we've got all those lists of human causes of the Industrial Revolution. I want you to tell me what the human causes of this particular problem are. So if you're doing global warming, you need to write down what the human causes of that are. Key events of the revolution. So you are designing your own revolution. You're going to tell me what 4 key events of it are. So if you are saying we're going to have an environmental revolution, you're going to say, in this revolution, this will happen. People will rally, there will be laws made to change it, there'll be movies made about it, whatever. Work out what the key steps of your revolution are. I'm going to skip that extension a bit. Look at that if you're feeling confident with this, but I'll come back to that a bit later. Now, in that text box down the bottom is the really important part. Finally, to better understand the connection between faith and action, you are required to complete one practical task that would happen as part of your revolution. For example, if your revolution relates to poverty, you could create a shoebox of hope and donate it. If it relates to climate change, you could plant a tree. If it relates to refugees, you could write a letter to your local member of parliament advocating for change. So with this thing that you identify that's wrong with the world, you actually need to design a revolution for it, say there is too much pollution. Let's have a revolution for this would look like this. And as part of that, a practical thing I can do for it is go plant a tree, go pick up rubbish or something similar to that. We'll have a bit of time to look at my example, but are there any questions before we do that? Great, let's flip over the page. Now, you are required to present this to me somehow. Options of presentation include, so those dot points there, you need to have information and you need to present that to me. You can present that as a film, a report, so just writing, similar style to the other example, PowerPoint presentation, oral presentation, speech, website, poster, or free choice. So if you like, you could put together a big poster on the environmental revolution, and you could have, these are the 4 events of the environmental revolution. This is the problem, this is why we need to have a revolution, and this is what I did. Here's a picture of me planting a tree or something as part of that revolution. With me so far? Kind of. Any questions before we get to the example? Yes, you.
Can all of these things be done sort of creatively, so not like just a straightforward film someone said, here is what I did?
Yes, probably. Can you give me any, just clarify that a bit for me?
So in a way saying what they did, just not directly straight up saying, this is what we did for listing office.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we can talk closer with the actual example, but the short answer to that is yes, that's fine. As long as it's including the information in something a bit more mellifluous way, that's fine. Gabrielle.
Well, if you can't, I mean, if you're going to apply a trip, but what if the thing that you do, you can't really do anything to help it really, but you want other people to help you out?
Okay, can you give me an example?
Like, you know how they don't have, they don't have any proposed here, and it's like kind of just, if they have like gases or something like that that they use, like,
can't plant a tree or pick up rubbish to fix that.
But you can't like put any like nuclear waste plants
Yeah.
anywhere, so you can't do that.
Yes. Okay. So what we can do, however, is that those big decisions to do with storage of hazards, chemicals, etc. Those decisions are made by our government. South Australia, only a year ago or so, was in the process of discussing whether we wanted to accept nuclear waste here in South Australia. Those decisions are made by our politicians, and our politicians are not doing their job if they don't listen to us. So what we can do in that situation is write a letter, say, "Dear Jane Weatherall, dear my local member, dear whoever, this is my opinion, this is the problem, this is what needs to happen so we can fix that." That can be your practical task there. Yep, cool. Okay, any other questions? Cool. What we're going to do quickly is we're going to you're going to watch my example. So I completed the second part as well and completed a revolution on it. I'm going to quickly share that with you now. It's really awkward because my face is huge on this screen. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So what I'm about to do now is show you my completed example of the revolution, okay? So I've looked at part one. Part one was about a report on the human qualities of the Industrial Revolution. Now we're looking at part two. Part two is where we design our own revolution aimed at fixing a problem in the world. And here's my example of that. What I want you to notice is that every single one of my slides will correspond to those dot points there, and also to the assessment criteria on the back. So make sure you keep those up. See how the process I've gone of taking the assessment criteria and designing an assessment to that. Okay, so my revolution, yes you?
It says for the key events in here, in our criteria, it says 5 or more. Back on here, it says listed and describe at least 4.
Yes, thank you very much. So typo there, my fault. And I'll get you to take out your pens in just a second. It's meant to be 4 info. Yep. You don't need to change it now. I'll make sure I tell the whole class that a bit later, just so I don't spend time filming stuff. Yes, you?
Do you have a pen for like spelling?
Absolutely. Can you please pass that to that nameless person? Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so here's my example. Now, I've done a PowerPoint presentation. I could have done a poster, I could have done a film, I could have done whatever I wanted. So you do not need to present to the class if you don't want to. If you want, you can do something similar to what I've done, but you can take the same information, the same material, and do it as a poster, a film, a report, something like that. Okay, so from now on, picture me as a student, and this is my example presentation. So the revolution I designed was the altruism revolution. Altruism is selfless concern for the well-being of others. So if someone is altruistic, they are caring about other people. And I think the revolution we need to have is one where people care about people, one where people care about others more than they currently do. That's the revolution I think we need to have. So what's the problem? If I'm saying that we need to have a revolution, what's the problem that I'm trying to fix? Student with your iPad, are you able to please an iPad? Thank you. So what's the problem we're trying to fix? Here's a quick little picture. This is talking about the amounts of money in the world. The red stuff is money. So the red stuff is the money. All these different segments here, there's 5 in total, each of them represents 20% of the world's population. And we can see that the top 20% has almost all the money in the whole world. And in fact, the top, this is an estimate here, but the top, 3% has probably more money than everybody else put together as well. But look at the situation where people are caring about themselves so much that they're happy to hold on to money. They're not sharing money with other people. They're just holding on to it. I reckon that's a problem. I reckon that's something we need to change. And that's kind of what my revolution is designed at changing. Helping people be more compassionate, more altruistic in sharing stuff with others. It's kind of like there's a big storm blowing, a big problem going on in the world. Those problems can be things like poverty. And when you see a hitchhiker and they have to keep walking, hands up if you know what a hitchhiker is. Good. Those of you who don't know, hitchhikers are people who don't have cars, so they walk from place to place, holding out their thumb, hoping someone picks them up. It's kind of like we're happy to let other people go through hardship instead of helping them. Another place where we see this kind of people focused on themselves, not focused on other people, is with loneliness. We see in our world some people who have got no one to talk to, who feel like they're not connected. And I reckon if we cared about others more, we'd be more ready to look out for other people. So they're just a few examples of what the problem is. The problem that my revolution is designed at fixing. It's kind of like there's that storm going on around us, and we're just happy in our bubble. As long as we're comfortable and okay, it's kind of like we don't need to worry about anybody else. And that's what I want to change. Why do I want to change it? Well, I believe in a guy called Jesus, and he tells us to treat others the way we want to be treated. So firstly, because of my faith, I think this revolution is important. Secondly and finally, we've got real people in our world going through real pain, real suffering, real tough stuff. And surely that's reason enough for this revolution as well. The fact that there's real people in our world going through hardship. What are the human causes of my problem? What are the human causes of this lack of caring about others? I reckon a bit of laziness, a bit of comfort. People just kind of like doing what they've always done. It's a bit easier. And secondly, ignorance. I don't think people in this world are necessarily bad. I think some people just don't really know how exciting and how meaningful giving can be. I think we've got this skewed view of what's important in our world. I think we think if I've got a good car and an iPhone and whatever, all this other stuff, I'm going to be happy. I don't think people realise how fulfilled and how satisfied and happy we can be without that stuff. I reckon if we actually engage in something more meaningful, actually get to know each other, be kind to each other, I think we'll find our lives are just much more satisfying through that. So I don't think people are bad. I just think that they don't really know how good life can be if you do something different. The revolution itself, I think, there are 5 main parts of my revolution. So what's actually going to happen? What are the key events? In the same way the Industrial Revolution was a real thing that happened, if I was to design this revolution, a real thing that happened, what would it be? Well, the first thing that would happen would be a celebrity event. I'll tell you about more detail about this in just a second. Social media frenzy, individual acts of kindness, giant public rally, and finally there'll be change to our laws here in Australia. I'm going to go through all those in detail now. So, firstly, the celebrity event. We've already got celebrities doing stuff. We've got Angelina Jolie over there, doing some beautiful things. We've got Hugh Jackman over there. These people are already pretty nice people. You see them getting out about helping others. But I want to see them doing incredibly selfless, altruistic things. But I want to see it put together with as much class and as much creativity as the next X-Men film or as the latest big Hollywood blockbuster. I want to see this to be a massive, a feature film movie focusing on altruism, having all our celebrities showing how good life can be when you're actually being generous and looking after others. That's the first thing. That's going to spike the interest. That's going to capture the interest of all of the public. It's going to be followed by a social media frenzy. Facebook and YouTube and everything's just going to light up saying, that was brilliant. I love the way Angelina Jolie and Justin Bieber finally put aside the differences and helped dig a well in Nicaragua. Or I love the way that Hugh Jackman was able to help clean the teeth of the hippo belonging to that kid in Botswana or something. All these celebrities doing really, really generous things. All discussed on social media, people getting excited about that. And then that's going to spark people, so the next event in my revolution will be all these individual acts of kindness. People actually saying, yeah, I see what they did. I'm going to go do similar things in my community, in my world. So we've got this big media event, we've had the social media go nuts, and everyone's kind of inspired by that to say, yeah, let's do this. Let's actually go and do these individual acts of kindness. Now, you might think that's crazy, but after the Hunger Games came out, there was an increase in the amount of bows and arrows sold by something like 20 or 30%, just because of one movie. One movie caused a real economic difference through the sale of hobby/weapon in a very, very big way, in a way that affected the economy. And so we've already seen how films can influence what happens in our world. And so what I'm saying is, I want this film that's put together, I want that to kind of cause a similar impact, but a selfless, altruistic impact from lots of different people. The next event in my revolution is a massive public rally. So I want to see all the energy and enthusiasm of big protests or the big rally, but with all the happiness and kindness and good vibes of an Australia Day barbecue. I want to see people marching down the streets, kind of marching to Parliament House at a big protest, saying we want change. But on the way there, they're stopping and buying drinks for homeless people, or they're stopping and helping old ladies mow their lawn, or they're doing all these acts of kindness as part of this public rally. I want to see people passionate, engaged about this, but doing acts of kindness along the way. And finally, that's going to finish with legislation reform. As we know, politicians are paid to listen to the people in their country. Finally, they're going to feel the pressure and feel the change from the people, and they're going to start to make laws that reflect the values of Australians, which is going to be more altruistic. We're going to see the government put more money into things like foreign aid, more money into things like looking after homeless people or single mums or people just out of prison, etc. Now, as you know, you need to complete a practical element for this task. My practical element was one day on the streets of Adelaide, this was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was on Grenfell Street and I found this fellow called Jay. Jay has had a pretty darn rough life. He lives on the streets at the moment. And as a very, very simple thing, as part of this revolution, my practical element, I spent, according to my receipt, $22.65 on a Whopper meal from Hungry Jack's and a couple soft drinks, and bought lunch for me and Jay and sat down and had that with him. So I think that's a good example of a very, very small thing. Obviously not changing the world in a huge way, but just a quick little practical example of actually something we can do as part of that revolution that would help make the world a slightly better place. My final point there, I know it's only a tiny gesture, but if we could multiply that by everybody in Adelaide, if Adelaide became the sort of city where people are doing stuff for other people on a regular basis, think of the sort of place that would be. That's the extension bit. I'm not going to go into that because we're running out of time and I don't want to overcomplicate things. Remember that bubble I said at the start, how it's kind of like we're living in that bubble, and as long as it's good inside our bubble, we don't really mind what's happening outside of it. I reckon once we pop that bubble, once we actually experience what life's like on the other side, I think we'll actually realise that it's more satisfying, more fulfilling, and it's actually nice to be doing all these altruistic things. So, that was my example, and pretend example thing. And the end goal is for you, in your pairs, to create something similar to that with that information. It can be either a presentation, video, poster, report, whatever, with all that information in it. Questions?
What would you break down?
That would have to be